Welcome back to my channel. Sometimes as I work on a video, the hard part is deciding what not to include. My tendency is to want to include everything, but at the same time, I really don't like long videos. I prefer them to be surgically precise, focusing on one thing. So I have this contradictory motivation to want to narrow the scope. Regardless, I'll end up with lots of odds and ends saved, which I have no idea when or if I will ever use them. So I thought maybe this would be a good time to try to clear out some of these items I've set aside. With that in mind, let me respond to some things said by a channel I haven't referred to before. It is called Our Philippines Journey. This is not the same as Mike's Philippine Journey, but adding to the confusion is that the person behind Our Philippines Journey is also named Mike, just spelled the normal way. So for this video, I'll call him Mike and refer to the other guy as Mickey or Mickey Mouth. Hopefully you've already watched my earlier video released May 24th, which includes some crazy reactions Mickey Mouth made to a video by Rebuti. Well, it turns out that Mickey also talked about that video on a live stream with Mike. I don't know much about Mike, so I won't be accusing him of being nasty or dishonest, but he said some rather strange things in response to Rebuti's video, so I'll start with that. If you haven't watched my video about Mickey attacking Rebuti, I suggest you do so to help you understand this video. Rebuti had talked about the practice of a Filipina bringing her foreigner boyfriend to her hometown to meet the family for the first time. It was expected there would be a party that the foreigner would pay for. Before going on, let me point out that while Rebuti is talking about foreigner boyfriends, that doesn't mean it only applies to foreigners. For example, Jimbo360, born and raised in the Philippines, said it was expected of Filipinos too if they had money. So why did Rebuti say foreigners? Well, likely simply because her audience is overwhelmingly foreigners, and that Filipinos wouldn't need to be made aware of these things anyway. If you think otherwise, the solution is simple enough. Just ask Rebuti to clarify rather than, assume it must be something else. Anyway, Mike said this.
Do you sponsor a big dinner or go out or what, like that, whatever? Maybe, but not in the beginning. Not when you first know them, After you've been with them for a while. All right, yeah. You know what? Let's take, your 20 closest relatives to the beach and fuck up a pig. All right? Whatever.
It seems this Mike listened too much to Mickey Mouth's misrepresentation of what Rebuti actually said, and, unfortunately, believed Mickey. As my earlier video documented, Rebuti did not say it was something you do at the beginning of a relationship. She said it was when you visited your girlfriend's hometown to meet the family for the first time. That can be long after the relationship begins. So Mike's criticism seems to be based on Mickey's false description. Otherwise, he would recognize that Rebuti was reporting a situation that Mike seems he should be fine with. Here's more.
But this bitch, for her to say in the beginning is tradition and is expected, and then turn around after a diatribe of what's expected and tradition and say, hey, you know what? Or you could tell him up front, this is not your expectation. And it's like, why didn't you start like that? Why didn't you just say, hey guys, be up front and have her be up front and just tell her up front, I'm not sponsoring all this crap.
Nothing like some sexist name calling to start, and that is more of a diatribe than anything Rebuti said. After all, a diatribe is a forceful and bitter verbal attack. That might fit Mike's use of the B word for many of Mickey Mouth's statements, but not Rebuti. But the rest makes no sense either. There is the part that the Filipinos should say up front that it isn't their expectation, specifically that Rebuti didn't start with that. Really? Let's see. Rebuti's entire video was 10 minutes long, and she begins talking about the guy discussing things with his Filipina after just over 6 minutes. You don't need much of an attention span to get to that part. Rebuti specifically covered the importance of talking it over, and you don't have to agree with this practice. Doesn't matter if it was in the first minute or the 6th minute. Next quote.
Why would you meet the family and take them out? spend a fortune at a resort, because I have done that, but not in the beginning, okay? Never in the beginning, all right? You know, once a year, once every, and even then I say once a year, you got to remember, we're in the province every 6 to 8 weeks, so once a year, that's not so bad.
Again, that seems to be based on Mickey Mouse's misrepresentation that it was when a relationship begins. Rebuti's context was only when you go to her hometown to meet the family for the first time, a rather important event. Note that Mike seems fine with once a year, and he starts to say once every What could he have been planning to say? I don't know why he stopped, but I'd say the most likely thing that would fit would be once every 6 months. No other word I can think of fits that S sound as well in this context. But okay, Mike does focus on once a year as acceptable, and remember, he said he's done it himself. Remember that Rebuti said it might be twice a year, which either isn't much more than Mike said, or if that S sound was referring to every 6 months, it is the same. So again, why is Mike complaining? Well, besides making the mistake of listening to Mickey Mouse. Next, we have a bit more from Mike.
How does she get off saying this is tradition? I don't see Filipino guys doing this, so now it's just a tradition of foreign guys?
Well, I've already pointed out she was addressing a foreigner audience who would usually be unaware of these things. So it really doesn't mean the practice is reserved for foreigners, and locals would already know. Besides, the same thing was discussed on Jimbo 360's channel, and he said it applied to Filipinos too, if they were wealthy enough. But most aren't. Meanwhile, whether accurate or not, Filipinos tend to think Westerners are wealthy enough. So nothing unusual here. As for tradition, well, that is a tricky word. I mean, exactly when does something officially become tradition? There is no rigid rule, but certainly this happens a lot, so it doesn't sound like an outlandish usage of the term in this case. Next, Mike talks about a situation he observed personally.
And it was a busy night. I would venture to say there were 500 to 800 people up and down the street, maybe 1,000 in all the bars by midnight. Those guys are not taking those girls and saying, you know what, I'm in love and I'm going to go meet the family. So I'm not sure how much of a tradition it is, because some of these guys are wanting to date these girls, all right? But these guys are not doing that shit. I don't see it as a tradition. I don't understand where she gets off on it.
Do you see the problem? Sure, one can argue about exactly how far vague terms like tradition go, but he is challenging it on the basis of what people do in a bar district. You know, a place which is not representative of the country as a whole. I've never heard of a scientific survey where they based it on patrons in bars, unless the survey was specifically about people in bars. Those guys may well want to date those girls, but there are probably a lower percentage who are looking for long-term, serious relationships with them. You know, the ones where it is important to eventually meet the family. Mike continues.
I had a long conversation with my wife about that because I wanted to really try and find a way to verbally get across what saving face was being defined as. And she emphatically told me, look, we don't do saving face. We really don't. What we do is we don't lie.
This has the same problem as all the rest. It is likely based on how Mickey Mouse misrepresented what the Filipina P actually said. That was certainly the case with every Filipina Mickey asked. He gave the false description first, the one where he claimed that P said that lying was part of saving face, even though P said the opposite. So of course the Filipinos he told that to were quick to say they didn't believe in saving face because they don't lie. Remember, Mickey failed to apply that trick to Jimbo 360 before asking him about saving face in the Philippines, and Jimbo said saving face was very important. So there was a good chance anything Mike said to his wife was based on the slant that Mickey passed on to so many others. Let's jump to an item I left out from a video 2 weeks ago, the one related to the Filipina P's video, Death of Your Spouse. One of Mickey Mouse's commenters, as part of his claim that P was only referring to a spouse, wrote, "The word she uses is spouse, which literally means wife, or these days you could stretch it to mean someone you live with as if they were your wife." Mike didn't accept it and responded with,
He's then going to take a definition. He tries to hit me and say, well, she talked about spouse, okay? And then he goes like this, which literally means wife. Or these days you can stretch it to someone you live with as if they were your wife. So now you want to hit me with a definition, yet then all of a sudden you want to change the definition? My answer to this gentleman is spouse is spouse. You can't change it.
As I pointed out in the earlier video, P was not only including a spouse, so Mykkie had a point there, even though he screwed it up since P was consistently talking about serious, long-term, age-gap relationships with a caring and devoted Filipina. The problem with Mike's effort to hold a very strict line on definitions is, well, more than one problem actually. First, it is a legitimate point to compare a couple living together as if they were married. Happens quite a lot. Sometimes legitimately in the sense that the couple are taking the view that a marriage license is just a piece of paper that they don't need. Some states have common law marriage. Some countries have a similar legal aspect. In fact, I found a Canadian case where a couple had been dating for more than 3 years, but they didn't even live together. Yet based on their relationship, the court determined the two were a spouse. So, surprise, the definition of spouse isn't quite as restrictive as Mike thinks. Next, there is a less legitimate situation where a man tells his girlfriend they don't need no stinking license, but he is just trying to minimize his legal commitment to take advantage of a naive woman, even as he tells his girlfriend it is just like being married. If you are convincing your girlfriend that you really are serious when you aren't, from my point of view, you deserve to be treated as a spouse anyway for fraud. Just my opinion. And I believe Mykkie himself has done videos about how the Philippines can treat you as a married couple, even if not married. But there's one more problem for Mykkie. Remember that stuff I told you about Mykkie claiming the Filipina P was advocating girlfriend alimony? Yet she didn't. Nothing she said fits under the definition of alimony. If Mykkie wants to hold strict definitions, he can't move the goalpost for his convenience. Okay, one more item. Mykkie likes to criticize the appearance of Filipinas he doesn't like for some reason, even though it has nothing to do with the issues. I'll certainly get around to a detailed video about the nonsense of publicly rating women negatively, but here's a quick example of Mike not even being logical nor consistent. A commenter during a live stream wrote, I rate P facial as a 5, body is an 8, which puts her at a 7. To which Mykkie said,
Yeah, you can't do separation. You can't do that, bro.
As I said, Mykkie is neither logical nor consistent. He said something similar to another poster where he specifically said you can only consider the face, not the body. Yet he is on record as saying P's face was a 3 and her body is a 6. But his lack of logic is the more important item. Mykkie's main argument has been you won't approach a woman to begin with unless you find her attractive. Okay, so since when do men, when they first see a woman, only see her face? Oh, sure, it's possible to have that happen, just like it's possible to see a girl's figure without seeing her face at first. Sometimes you have to go out of your way to see her face, and if her body is good, you probably will. Everyone has their preferences, but I suspect if a guy thinks a woman's body is a 10, but her face is a 6, he'd prefer her to a woman he feels has a face that's a 10 and a body that's a 6. Especially if you see her at a beach where the face may be far more artificially enhanced than her body in a bikini. Well, at least I was able to clear out a lot of miscellaneous material. Thanks for watching, and don't let the trolls stop you from speaking out.